everyone. Hope you guys are having fun from home. I miss you. Today I'm going to read Beauty and the Beast, my favorite. And I got a few special guests here. Goofy, Minnie, Mickey, Donald, two beasts, and Pluto. And since I can't be with all of you, I figured I'd read to my friends here. All right. Beauty and the Beast. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, a young prince lived in a shining castle. Although he had everything he desired, he was spoiled, selfish, and unkind. One freezing night, an old beggar woman came to the castle. She offered the prince a red rose in return for shelter from the bitter cold. Repelled by her haggard appearance, he sneered the gift and turned the old woman away. "Do not be deceived by appearances," she told him, "for beauty is found within." The old woman was really an enchantress who saw that the prince had no love in his heart. As punishment, she transformed him into a hideous horned beast and placed a spell on everyone in the castle. Then she gave him an enchanted mirror as his only window to the outside world. The enchantress left behind the rose she had offered him, which would bloom until his 21st year. For the spell to be broken, he must learn to love another and earn that person's love in return before the last petal fell. If not, he would remain a beast forever. Not far from the castle was a charming little French village. There lived a beautiful girl named Belle who loved to read about far-off places, daring sword fights, magic spells, and prince in disguise. She had always had her nose in a book, and the villagers laughed at her. Belle was so different from them. One bright fall morning, Belle was crossed the town square. She was too busy with her book to notice handsome, conceited Gaston, whom all the other village girls admired. But Gaston had noticed Belle. "Now that's the girl I'm going to marry," he said. "She's the only one who's worthy of me." And just then a loud explosion boomed from Belle's cottage. "Papa," she cried, and ran to investigate. In the smoke-filled cottage, Belle was relieved to find her father, Maurice, in one piece. "What happened, Papa?" she asked, gazing to the ruins of his newest invention. "I'll never get this hunk of junk to work," he said in frustration, giving his contraption a little kick. "Yes, you will, Papa," said Belle. The invention looked like an old armchair on wheels with a huge engine attached to it. A maze of pipes, whistles, bells, ropes, and pulleys erupted from the back. Inspired by Belle's confidence in him, Maurice seized the tool and went back to work. That afternoon, Maurice set off with the invention. "You'll win first prize at the fair," said Belle. Their patient horse Philippe carried Maurice and pulled the heavy cart behind them. A cold fog soon swallowed up the travelers. Philippe whinnied nervously as the gathering darkness. Mist rose around them, and a cloud of bats took flight. Maurice looked back fearfully as the sound of prowling wolves, and Philippe reared up in alarm and lunged forward. "Whoa, Philippe, whoa!" cried Maurice as the terrified horse almost ran them off a cliff. Then Philippe heard a blood-chilling howl and threw off his rider. Uh-oh. Dazed by his fall, Maurice stared into the mist at the fleeing horse. Then the sound of approaching wolves rose to him in action. He fled down a dark hillside, dodging gnarled branches and knobby roots until he stumbled across a huge gate, rusty from disuse. Desperately, he reached open the gate, and it fell through, slamming it behind him just as the wolves attacked. Breathless, Maurice crossed the neglected grounds of a forbidden castle and approached the door. When no one answered his knock, he stepped in cautiously. "Hello," he called. into the vast echoing chamber. Not a word, whispered a mantel clock to a golden candle. "Oh, Cogsworth, have a heart," he called. "You are welcome here, monsieur." Maurice was amazed to see a talking candle. Whoa. Maurice sank into a chair as Cogsworth looked around nervously for his master. Guests were never allowed in the castle, let alone on the master's chair. Then a tea cart arrived with Mrs. Potts, the teapot, and her son Chip. Suddenly, a huge hulking figure stormed into the room and loomed over Maurice. "A stranger!" growled the savage voice. Then great claws grasped the terrified inventor and carried him into the dungeon. At home in the village, Belle was awaiting her father's return when there was a knock at the door. It was the hunter Gaston, all dressed up. "Come in," she said reluctantly. She didn't know that a crowd had gathered outside to watch Gaston propose to her, then marry her on the spot. Gaston demanded, "Say you'll marry me, Belle." Not nice, Gaston. Belle backed up against the door as he advanced on her. "I'm very sorry," she stammered, "but I just don't deserve you. But thanks for asking." Belle's fingers found the doorknob and she pulled the door open, causing Gaston to tumble out. He landed in a mud puddle just as his friend LeFou struck up the wedding band. Gaston got up from the puddle. "She's just playing hard to get," and he told the staring crowd. Then he stomped away. After the crowd had gone home, Belle went into the yard to feed the chickens. "I want much more than this provincial life," that's what she said. All of a sudden, her father's horse, Philippe, ran into the farm. "Philippe," she cried, "where's Papa?" The big horse snorted and whinnied away. "What happened?" asked terrified Belle. "Oh, you must take me to him." Belle gathered her skirt and leaped astride the tired horse, who had barely made it back, and he bravely thundered back towards the forest. Horse and rider plunged into the gloomy trees again, but Philippe slowed down as they approached the crossroads. "Which way, Philippe?" asked Belle. Reluctantly, Philippe headed downhill into the mist-shrouded woods, where he had left Maurice. Soon they arrived at the gates of the forbidden castle. "What is this place?" asked Belle. I don't know. Timidly, Belle entered the silent castle. "Papa," she called, "are you here? It's me, Belle." Cogsworth, Lumiere, and Mrs. Potts, astonished, followed her silently through the halls. "Don't you see?" Lumiere whispered to Cogsworth and Mrs. Potts. "She's the one we've been waiting for. The one who will break the spell." At last, Belle found Maurice in the remote dungeon. "Oh, Papa," she said, "your hands are freezing. We have to get you out of here." Suddenly, Belle sensed danger and whirled around to see a massive shape in the shadows. "I'm the master of this castle," the beast growled. "Please," she explained, "just let my father out of here. He's sick." "He shouldn't have trespassed here," replied the beast. "Then take me instead," Belle demanded. The beast stepped out of the shadows, and when she saw him clearly, she gasped in horror. "You must promise to stay here forever," he said. "You have my word," Belle said steadily, despite her fear. "Belle, no!" cried Maurice. "You don't know what you're doing." But the beast dragged him from the cell and took him to the courtyard. "Take him to the village," the beast said, which trotted away with Maurice inside. Belle watched from the window, sobbing, because she hadn't even been able to say goodbye. The beast returned to the tower to find Belle crying. "I'll show you to your room," he said gruffly, not knowing what else to do. As Belle followed him, he added, "You can go anywhere you'd like, except the west wing. That's forbidden." The beast opened the door to a comfortable bedroom and said awkwardly, "You'll join me for dinner." And Belle was left alone with the wardrobe, who was thrilled to have a beautiful girl in the room. "Well now," said the wardrobe carefully, "what shall we dress you in for dinner?" She flung open her doors. "That's very kind of you," said Belle, gazing at herself in the wardrobe mirrored door. "But I'm not going to dinner." "Oh, but you must," cried the wardrobe anxiously, just as Cogsworth appeared. "Ahem, dinner is served," he announced proudly. Downstairs, the beast drummed angrily on the table as the servants advised him to be patient with their visitor. "Master," said Lumiere, "have you thought that perhaps this girl could be the one to break the spell? You fall in love with her, she falls in love with you, and poof, the spell is broken. We'll be human again by midnight." "It's not that easy, Lumiere," said Mrs. Potts. "These things take time." "It's no use," said the beast. "But if she doesn't eat with me, she doesn't eat at all." Back in the village at the tavern, Gaston was brooding about Belle when Maurice burst into the room, muddy and wild-eyed. "Help!" he cried. "He's got Belle locked in a dungeon. We must go." "Slow down, Maurice," demanded Gaston. "Who's got Belle locked in a dungeon?" "A beast!" he cried. "A horrible, monstrous beast!" The others burst out laughing, convinced that the old avenger was crazy. As two of Gaston's cronies were about to hustle Maurice to the door, Gaston narrowed his eyes and thought. Pulling LeFou aside, he said, "I have a plan." That tricky Gaston. Later that night, Belle got very hungry. She found her way to the kitchen and heard the stove complaining to Mrs. Potts. "I work and slave all day long for what? A culinary masterpiece gone to waste." Belle stared curiously at the stove, which fell silent when he saw her. "I'm a little hungry," Belle confided to Mrs. Potts. "You are!" cried Mrs. Potts excitedly. "Stoke the fire," she called to Cogsworth Lumiere. "Break up the silver, wake up the china." "Remember what the master said about feeding her," said Cogsworth. But Mrs. Potts paid no mind. Be our guest, be our guest, put our service to the test. Tie your napkin around your neck, Sherry, and we'll provide the rest. Soup du jour, hot hors d'oeuvres, why we only live to serve. Try the gray stuff, it's delicious. Don't believe me, ask the dishes. We can sing, we can dance. After all, miss, this is France. And a dinner here is never second best. Go on, unfold your menu, take a glance, and then you'll be our guest, be our guest, be our guest. Belle had been warned not to go into the West Wing. But when the others weren't looking, she sped upstairs and entered the beast's lair. The dirty room was strewn with broken furniture, cracked mirrors, ripped clothes, and gnawed bones. The only beautiful living thing was the enchanted rose glowing inside the bell jar. When Belle reached out to touch the rose, the beast leaped into the room. "Why did you come here? Get out!" Terrified, Belle ran and fled down the stairs. She hurried outside and raced to the stable for Philippe. They escaped from the castle into the freezing night. Suddenly, Philippe snorted in alarm, and Belle saw cruel yellow eyes burning at her in the dark. "The wolves!" Philippe broke into a frenzied gallop. Branches tore them as they raced through the forest, with the wolves following close behind. Philippe reared in terror as a wolf snapped at his heels. Belle was thrown off, and Philippe's reins caught on a tree branch. Belle seized a sharp branch to defend Philippe. As the wolves closed in on her Belle, a huge paw snatched one of the wolves away. "The beast!" He grappled with the snarling wolves, flinging them to either side. The forest echoed with the roar of combat. The wolves were no match for the bear's fury. One of them bit his arm before he sent it flying with a sweep of his great paw. The wolf slammed against a tree and lay still. Then the rest of the pack slunk away. The beast staggered and fell to the ground. Belle knew that she could escape if she wanted to. But when she saw that the beast was badly wounded, she stayed to help. Supporting the beast between them, Belle and Philippe went back to the castle. When Belle tried to put a compress on the beast's arm, he roared, "That hurts!" "If you'd hold still," said Belle, "it wouldn't hurt as much." "If you hadn't run away," said the beast, "this wouldn't have happened." But he let her tie a scarf around his arm as a bandage. "By the way," said Belle, "thanks for saving my life." After that incident, the whole household was delighted to see a friendship growing between Belle and their master. First, he showed her all the books in the huge library and said that they're yours. The next day, Belle and the beast had dinner together. Awkwardly, the beast sat in a small chair and tried to eat soup with a fork. Later, Belle read the story of the King Arthur and Queen Genevieve to the beast. The tale was so romantic that Lumiere cried. Even Cogsworth wiped away a tear before he sent everyone back. Tale as old as time, true as it can be. Barely even friends, then somebody bends unexpectedly. Oh. The beast asked, "Belle, are you happy here?" "With me? If only I could see my father again, just for a moment," she said. "There is a way," said the beast, and he brought out the enchanted mirror. When they looked into it, they were shocked to see Maurice lost in the forest, shaking with cold as he searched for Belle. "Papa," cried Belle, "oh no, he's sick and alone." "Then you must go to him," said the beast. Handing her the mirror, he said, "Take it with you, so you'll have something to remember me by." Oh, beast. "Thank you for understanding how much he needs me," said Belle, touching the beast's paw. And then she ran to the courtyard and rode away as the beast watched from his balcony. When the beast went inside, he said sadly to Cogsworth, "I let her go." "You what?" said Cogsworth. "How could you?" "I had to." "Why?" asked Cogsworth. "Because I love her," sighed the beast. With the mirror's help, Belle found Maurice and brought him home. He was definitely delirious with fever and dangerously sick. When Maurice began to recover, he could scarcely believe that the beast had Belle go. "That horrible beast!" he asked her in amazement. "But he's different now, Papa. He's changed." Just then, there was a knock at the door. Whoops. Belle opened the door to see a strange man standing in front of the villagers in a van marked Insane Asylum. "I've come to collect your father." "My father's not crazy," said Belle angrily. "He was raving about a huge beast," said LeFou. He knew that Gaston planned to have Maurice locked up unless Belle agreed to marry him. Belle ran into the cottage and returned with the mirror. "Show me the beast," she demanded. When the villagers saw the beast in the mirror, they screamed. Monsieur Dirk sped away in his van, and Gaston seized the mirror from Belle. Furious that his plan had failed, he told the villagers, "The beast will make off with your children. He'll come after them in the night. I say we kill the beast." "Not nice, Gaston." "I won't let you do this," said Belle. But Gaston locked her Maurice in the cellar. Oh no. Guided by the mirror, Gaston led the mob through the forest. On the way, they chopped down a tree using a battering ram. Cogsworth, Lumiere, and Mrs. Potts saw them from the window. "Sacre bleu! Invaders! Warn the master, Cogsworth! We'll be ready for them. Who's with me?" And the others had already scattered to alert the household and prepare a defense. The battering ram crashed through the door, and the villagers entered the castle. At first, all was quiet. They were confronted by a host of angry objects. Pitchers and ladles, pots and pails, prepared to battle. Upstairs, the beast sat forlornly in Belle's room. "Please let me be in peace," he said to Mrs. Potts when she came to warn him. A thunderbolt exploded in the sky as the villagers crashed with the defenders, but nothing could rouse the beast to action. Poor beast. When the Belle arrived, she saw that Gaston had forced the beast into the balcony. She watched in horror as he clubbed the unresisting beast, driving him toward the edge of the steep roof. "No!" Belle cried, and she rode for a leap into the castle up the stairs. At the sound of Belle's voice, the beast rose to action to fight off his attacker. Belle reached his lair. He grabbed Gaston and gripped him tightly by the throat. "Let me go," said Gaston. "I'll do anything." The beast struggled with himself, but he had become too human to kill. Growling, he pushed Gaston away and turned to Belle. As Gaston backed away, his foot caught off the rail gutter. He tripped and plunged from the roof. A great hush fell over the castle, and rain splattered the balcony. The beast looked at Belle and then collapsed. Belle ran to the beast's side and embraced him. "You came back," he said, weakly trying to smile. "At least I get to see you one last time." "No, don't talk like that. You'll be all right." In the beast's lair, the last petal was about to fall. "Maybe it's better this way," said the beast. "No!" cried Belle, overcome by tears. She leaned down to kiss him and said, "I love you." As Belle wept, the last petal fell, and suddenly the rain began to stop. Belle looked up and saw the air glistening with magic. The beast's eyes blinked open. His paws had been transformed into human hands. He touched his face and found that it was smooth. The spell was broken. The wilted rose had burst into the full bloom. "Belle, it's me." As Cogsworth, Lumiere, and Mrs. Potts looked joyfully at the magic swirled around them too, Cogsworth turned into a short, round, and fussy major domo with a mustache. Lumiere grew taller and taller until a suave and dashing maître d'hôtel stood in his place, and Mrs. Potts was transformed into the plump, smiling cook she had been before the spell. And Belle gazed happily at the handsome prince, whom her love had restored him to human form. One by one, the members of the prince's household became human again. They hugged each other with tears of joy as the magic carried Belle and the prince into the ballroom. There they began to dance and lived happily ever after. Yay!